Hi, it's Warren Whitlock here, back with more emerging technologies. We do this podcast so that I can share things that I find in my full-time research of what's happening next and what's happening beyond that and explaining it. And the podcast is going to tell you about a couple of ideas. Today, we're talking about cybersecurity. I usually try to avoid anything that talks about how to prevent loss and try to focus on what can bring us more abundance. And that means reducing friction in any of your daily practices of whatever you do. So many tools and so many ways to do that. But we need to take a minute and make sure we're taking care of some of the basics to make sure that you're secure when you're doing all these. And then if you can set it and forget it, yeah, maybe not forget it, but you got to keep on top of this a little bit, just not worry about it. There are cybersecurity threats out there. A little common sense goes a long way. And let's start with the most basic thing about being secure is the things you're doing this wrong. I know because I do this wrong. It's not allowing anything to grab your credentials and get away with it. So if a hacker wants to attack you, 90+% of the attack are going to include, and usually they're going after big corporations where they can get millions of accounts and steal credit card numbers and all that kind of stuff. You're somewhat protected depending on the various laws that if you do get attacked, they'll restore you. And the incidence of that is so low as a percentage that it's better to concentrate on the things you can do something about, the 90+%. And that is the getting information, the social engineering, the you give the hacker something he needs to get in. Sometimes it can be somebody else gives him the information. Somebody calls and asks your coworker or family member, "What can you give me the password to this? I need to help Warren do this." And so none of my passwords are on a post-it note near my monitor. That's basic because I don't want somebody friendly to me to then maybe make the mistake and give away my credentials. First of all, keep your credentials someplace safe. And usually, what these are called is a phishing attack. If you get an email, I got a text this morning telling me that the customs office needed information for me to verify my zip code before it could deliver the packet. I haven't ordered anything from outside the my country for some time. I'm not expecting anything. And so a customs office, that was the red flag. I knew right away. And it had the language wasn't quite what I'd expect from a government agent. And then the text closed off, and the customs office hopes you'll have a great day. But I decided to open that up because I was working on thinking about talking to you about this, and I took a look, and the URL that they wanted me to go to was customs.gov hyphen and then some more information. When they put that hyphen after the .gov or .com, whatever, you know that they're making up something. So looking at a URL, you can tell it. Don't click on a URL if you're not sure. Think about it. Go to the website or the way you normally log into your bank or customs office, you post office, whatever, and know that they're not going to send you messages saying "Dear user." And so a phishing attack has to have your name. So if they don't have your name, you've already not read it, I hope. But yeah, it doesn't matter how they get it, they're going to try to get it. I have a friend that lost millions of dollars because he had a extra security put on his cell phone, but somebody at the office of AT&T was corrupt and was paid to turn that off so that the hacker could get in, and resulted in a lot of trouble for the guy. And that can happen with somebody else do it. However, he had the millions of dollars to lose. If that's not you, don't worry about that one too much. Ransomware, boy, we've heard about that one. That one scares me too. That's when somebody does gain access and then manages to put something in your system that'll just turn everything off. Back in the day when I ran a computer store, the biggest one we had was the Michelangelo virus, which on Michelangelo's birthday, I think the 5th of March, would just wipe off everything that was on your hard drive, like you're going to get rid of the machine and start or give it to somebody and start it over. You don't want to do that. You don't want to reformat your hard drive, but that's how they did it then. Today, much more sophisticated. If somebody wants to take down a network, whatever, they've got to gain access. But the number one way they gain access is number one there, the social engineering or phishing attacks. And then passwords. I love to talk about passwords because you we hear things about making a better password. The number one tip I can give you: never go with default or password or 1 2 3 4 5. Use any of those kind of things for your password because that's something the first thing somebody's going to get. Birthdays, pets' names, children's names, those types of things. And the way that somebody cracks a password is it's called a brute force method. It just keeps entering passwords until it guesses. And so it will go A and then AAB and AAC and AAD and then put in the numbers and characters. So using a special character makes it harder to guess. Making it longer makes it harder to guess because they have to go through all available characters and do a try with each individual space. Is it A or capital A? Is it B or capital B or a dollar sign? And all those things are put in there. But here's a tip that I know I've checked this out with. I once had the opportunity to moderate a group of very smart guys on cybersecurity, and they talked about this kind of stuff and a lot more stuff to where I could barely keep up with listening to any of it. And then we opened up the floor for questions, and the number one question we got the very first was, "How do I get a secure password?" And so, two things. One, first of all, every place you use a password, you need something separate. And second, you need some kind of system. If you put a strong password vault on your device, that means you can get at it. And it's got the strongest security you can. Once open, fairly easy to get to things, but only you can get to it. Either it checks for your facial recognition or your fingerprint, or it has something before you can get into it. So you want to make it easy to get to when you need a password, but hard to do. I use that. I also use a system for my password that instead of a long string of characters and numbers that I'll never remember, obviously, especially if you're doing 12, 15 digits on every one. And instead, I use something you don't want to use like regular words, but I use something like that, something that's complete nonsense with maybe a special character like a question mark or explanation mark or what number symbol, at symbol, all those dollar sign. Yeah, I think I got most of them there. Hyphens and carrots, and carrot sounds good. So shift six, I think that is. And you want to do that, but you can use your own system. Here's the things that the hackers can't possibly know. If you have a system that you take a word that you have thought of, and let's just use duck because why not? And you decide that every time you spell duck, it's going to have a capital K and your lowercase duc and the capital K. By the way, I'm making these up. You can go ahead and try to hack me with this, but you won't get in because I don't use this. But a similar system that I use is to use a word like duck, then something else that identifies what the site is, taken from the day you first signed up, or something that you know that it won't be an easy thing to guess. Not somebody's name or birthday, not your own birthday for sure, not the most special day in your life, the day you first found out about the Emerging Technologies podcast. No, let's not use that. That'd be too easy to guess. And maybe not. Actually, I was kidding, but that might be a good one. Something like that that you put in, and then a way to increment and make it different. So if it's going to be Google that you log into, maybe you put a G in a certain place. And by putting this together, you come up with your own code. I think when I did it, I've explained this 100 times, but when I first did it for me, I took about 2 minutes. I later had to add make some changes. And now I can tell most of the time if I have a new password, I have that memorized for some time until I just get too many and I can't. The other thing is it's a lot easier to regenerate a password than to the trouble of looking it up if you're having any trouble at all. Just make sure you use that. Another thing is Passkeys. Now I'm just getting into this myself. I always didn't like doing it. There's 2FA, which is two-factor authentication, which means that somebody sends you an email and you have to answer that. That means that the hacker needs access to your email account. If they've got that, they can go right through 2FA. But without that, they're stuck. I've seen this cause a lot of problems as I'm helping other people, setting up various systems and trying to remember everything and how to get into a certain email account that's maybe was for the business and not for me. And when I'm helping them, I of course can't remember how to get in because I don't check the email there. And so I have found 2FA to be a problem, but they then came up with passkeys. And just like we use in crypto, in fact, it is crypto, it's cryptography. It is a long string of characters, too long for you to remember, but half of it is given to the site you're doing business with, and you keep half of it. So let's just say that it was a bank and you set up a passkey. That means when you go to the website, you don't need a password. What you need is the half of the file that's stored on your device, and you have to have it on the device, on the hardware, your laptop, your phone, your tablet, whatever you're using. And you can copy them from one to another. It makes a barcode, and you have to scan the barcode, and you can move it to another device. But just if you're on one device, say you're on the laptop and that's the only place you pay your bills and handle your money, then that's pretty easy. It's your phone, so you use only your phone for that. I can't do that. I'm too scatterbrained. I get up from my desk and I walk to the next room, and immediately I see something on my phone and want to check into something, and I'm lazy and don't want to walk back to the office. I sit there and try to figure out how to get the same information on my phone. If you don't do that, you're better off where it is. A little bit of vulnerability because if somebody does get in, they get to everything. And something that could get stolen, I'd be careful about, even though the security to get into the passkeys is tough. They work just like a password, but instead of being a username that has to be unique on that system, and then it doesn't have, you don't have to, you can use the same one more than once, but the more unique, the better. And then a password, which of course is something that's going to be hard to remember. You get this passkey, and when you go to log in, it says access the passkey, and your password keeper then looks it up and says, bam, and then they go together. You put those two pieces together, it unlocks the puzzle, and you're in. I am finding, like I say, after many years of not paying too much attention to this outside of things like cryptocurrency, I started using it on a regular basis. It has saved me a half hour of time in the last 2 weeks just for using it on Google because there's so many different Google things I log into. Okay, great. So let me see. You got a strong password. You don't let anybody know what they are. And then you got to take care of your data. The data itself, I found out a long time ago that making regular backups can kill you. I just about had to close down a business some 25 years ago. I had really got into taking care of the accounting, and I went in on a Saturday. I spent hours. I was fixing accounts that had a penny balance and wiped them out with the credit and made them zero. And boy, I was so proud of myself. I'd done all this work, most accounting work I ever really got into myself, I think. And went home, and Monday morning, my operations manager comes in, and he can't access the hard drive where that's kept. And so he goes to his backups, and he was also the one that did the backup every single day religiously. He'd check the automatic backup and then move on with his day. What I didn't know was that for months, every day when he got into that, it had an error. And it's a Windows 95 backup, the worst backup system ever invented. And it would crash because one of the network drive wouldn't allow it to copy a file. And so it didn't crash with what it had. It crashed and just erased everything that it had backed up, and you were starting over again. So we went with 6 months of data gone, and I decided I'm not going to have that. I got into cloud and to making copies and doing backups, and finally to the point where I learned I didn't need backups. Used to put anything that was something we were done with the project onto a CD, burn it there, and then a DVD. I found out, no, we don't need that. Everything you do, you back up to the cloud someplace. And currently, I have a physical backup. I have a that copies all of my files every day, every hour actually, and I have copies of everything I do on a cloud. In fact, if I get to anybody's computer and I can get into my password vault, I can actually use any computer and be able to get onto all of that stuff. And I'm happy to talk about this because if you come at me and you're trying to get at some secret, what you're going to wind up getting is stuff that's not going to do you very much good. Old spreadsheets, plans for a promotion that I'm working on, things like that. The kind of things I want to keep private, but not the kind of things that are state secrets or nuclear codes. And so I'm pretty safe in saying that I'm not somebody that's going to get attacked. And hopefully you're thinking the same way, that it's that you're not, unless you are keeping things that are, if they come out, are going to change the world or cost millions of dollars. It's really work on doing more good in the world or getting more money or whatever your goal is, and not worry so much about the about having a cybersecurity incident. What do you do if somebody else has one? For instance, you're keeping your files on a cloud and somebody breaks into that. Well, a lot of that stuff is encrypted now, so that if somebody does break into your cloud account on Google, AWS with Amazon, I use a lot of Dropbox and just any of these. Apple has one, the iCloud, and they all are now secure to the way that if somebody else does gain access to the file, they can't read it because it's encrypted and only matches up your machine. That's why you need to log in when using a drive like that. That'll be great. Let me see what else can we mention here. We've got to go over Wi-Fi. Be careful. If you want, like me, I travel and grab the phone, do whatever I want anywhere, and then sometimes I'm sitting in a public place accessing public Wi-Fi, and I think twice before logging in there. And the encryption's getting to be pretty good on those kind of setups. If you use a VPN, virtual private network, it's just you, it's a direct line. I like to use the voice calls telephone example, that if I call you in the old days, they would route that call to 30 different places and wind up at you, but it would be basically you talking to me on a set of wires that weren't being used by anybody else. And the word cloud comes from the phone company setting up that all in a you can't tell where it's routed method. So if I'm in Bangkok and I want to call London, it may go through several countries or a satellite or whatever, but that's known to the phone company and not you. And then it's encrypted in all those places. So when it gets there, newer messaging, if you do want to be safe, the newer messaging like Telegram, WhatsApp, even Facebook Messenger now is doing end-to-end encryption, which means the minute you hit enter, it's encrypted, sent over wherever it goes, winds up at the other end, and then somebody reads it and they can decode it because the system knows it's them and no one else can get to that. A VPN makes it that way for everything that you do. Put them together, great. Nobody knows you're online, what you're doing. It's private. But I think my general rule of thumb is don't worry too much about that stuff, because unless you do something really dumb or you have something really big to protect, that's going to be okay. I'd say that if I am going to a public place or a Wi-Fi I don't know, I can do the banking later. My cell phone, when I'm in the US, is totally encrypted and I can access it through the carrier and I'm okay. So I'll pull out the cell phone and do that. I have a tablet that has a 5G module in it and it can talk right to the network. and I'm feeling pretty secure about that. But if it says free Wi-Fi and you click on that, you maybe don't want. First of all, I'm not sure you should click on it. Once you do, you definitely shouldn't be sharing your secrets that way. And if you think about it, though, everything you do when you log into social media, when you send a text message, whatever, can be seen by somebody else. It's a myth to think that there is any kind of complete privacy that can never be broken. There are some really interesting things coming up about pretty much hacking proof. It's some new technology comes in, but you pretty much have to be trusting the hardware, and that's something new and for the future. The other thing out there is the quantum computing, which someday will be able to break all this encryption, but that's someday. It's a ways off, and there's constantly people. There are a whole lot of people worrying about your security all the time. And if you get with a company you trust, that's okay. If somebody says, here's a free service, you never have to pay the big tech companies, I'd be real leery about what to use there unless you know what you're doing. If I want to store some archives on a drive, and somebody offers that to me and I know what the encryption is, and I'm pretty sure that there's nothing on there that I care about if somebody opens and steals my recipes or my game scores. Somebody wants to break in and get that, I'm not too worried about it. I wouldn't be use some common sense and put that just about anywhere. But I want something that I want to trust that it's there. Even something like family photos, you don't want to lose that. Come up with a system that makes sure you store it more than once, and then you can restore it anytime either your equipment or a hack happens, and you'll be okay. Same with social media. Whatever you're sharing is being seen by everybody. Doesn't matter if it's a private account, it can be seen by people that know what they're doing. And if you want to keep it secret, don't share it. I very openly share everything I can online, and that the key there is it's everything I can. I do what I can not to share my home address, what my children are doing, things like that, especially minor children, and tell the world about things like the family plans for vacation. I'm pretty careful about that unless it's something like, we just went to this place. It's one thing if I travel to a convention, it's another thing if I take the whole family and nobody's at home. And common sense is what makes all this work. And in putting my email address and social media handles at Warren Whitlock out there, I do not get people trying to break in any more than the rest of you do. I do get those texts and emails where somebody's trying to scam me. It's fun now. I sometimes I get a particularly bad one. Right now, the one I'm working on is the one that's automated sales. Somebody sent me an email the other day and said, I'm sorry I missed the appointment. And I'd never heard of the person. If it doesn't make sense or it's too good to be true, another one I got just this morning was that wanted to put $6,000 in my online gambling account, my online casino account. I don't use online casinos. That's pretty safe to say that it's not for me. Uh, but it looks pretty tempting sometime. If it looks too good to be true, it quite likely could be. There are so many things bringing so much abundance to us in the future. Let's focus on them and then use some common sense with cybersecurity, and we're okay. This has been Emerging Technology with my name, Warren Whitlock. You probably see attached to this video. You can leave a comment on YouTube or your podcast, wherever you're getting this. And you can write me at warrenwhitlock.com. Easy to find, always online, and looking for your questions, and we'll answer them in an upcoming episode of Emerging Technology.